Welcome back to the Profit Answer Man, Dom. It's great to have you join us again.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so today, we talked about the profit leaks last episode. This time I kind of want to get into, I'll call it the softer side of business. It's all the things that we kind of have to do from a mindset, from a systems and processes and thinking about our business versus doing in our business.
Yeah.
Now, I know you've been involved in a lot of different organizations. You've been involved with EO. You know a lot about EOS. You know a lot about Vern Harnish and Scaling Up. You've worked with Brian Tracy.
Right.
I got to believe from all of that, you've learned some lessons that we can talk about today that at the end of the day, by doing this work, we get our ultimate goal, which is a growing and more profitable business, so that you can not lift that heavy bar that you talked about last time, hand it off to somebody else, you go lift the bar, I'm going on vacation, I'm going to go have fun, we're going to talk 5 minutes a day, and that's how I'm going to run my company.
Yeah, let's do that.
So what are those? Where should we start?
I'm gonna start with EO. And it's an acronym. It stands for Entrepreneurs Organization. And it's one of those things that you wouldn't know about unless guys like you and I talk about it, Rocky. Because you and I know about these different groups. If you ever birds of a feather fly together, or you soar with the eagles instead of hanging out with the turkeys, kind of thing. And EO is a worldwide group, and there's chapters in almost every major city, right? In order to be a member of EO, you have to be the owner of the company, and really you only have to have revenues of $1 million and above. So it's not a huge bar, but for a lot of people listening to your show and mine, that's where they're trying to get. But once you get there, you can start to hang out with other people. Imagine if you hung out or had friends who were also business owners in other industries who were all facing forward, thinking the big thinks, to quote Dr. Seuss. That's what EO is.
Can you give us some examples? Like what are they thinking about?
Well, you would think it's about business, but it's actually about the engine, which is the business owner who runs the business. So that, there's a combination of things we do. Obviously, there's a lot of learning, and your own chapter will bring in experts to talk on certain topics. And so you'll learn about things like profits and profitability and economic forecasts and taxes, and they might have you, Rocky, you'd be a great guest. You'd be a perfect kind of guest for an EO chapter, right? And I've met Mike Michalowicz because he's in EO as well, and he's been a guest, and he and I spoke in Germany. Like, he spoke on one stage, I spoke on another one, at a global EO event. So those are the kinds of things that you run across there. And then you work on the entrepreneur. So then in your private groups, because there's these private breakout groups, they're called forum, 8 or 10 other business owners, and you talk about the challenges of being a business owner. Because, and I don't know if this is a secret, it's hard and it's lonely being the leader when you can't talk to somebody else and express yourself openly. Did I say that right?
Yes, because I think even with your family, they don't understand you a lot of times. They don't want to hear about your problems because they have their own. You can't talk to your employees about your problems because and depending on where you are and what kind of a network you've already built, it's not like you're going to go to your competitor and talk about your problems. No. So, and I know most people are head down in their business, so they don't have the right networks or the right contacts. Usually early on in your business, you're too busy building it to look around. And that's been, one of the biggest questions I always asked as I built my business is, where are my people hanging out? And I realized they were all hanging out head down in their business, and they weren't looking around. They weren't necessarily on social media. They weren't they weren't on LinkedIn even. That all the things that people told me to go looking weren't true. What I did know, though, and I learned, is many of them, they might be going to the gym, they might be in the car, they're listening to a podcast. And so I said, I'm going to pick that channel.
Pick that one. Yeah.
We go there. But yes, it's hard for business owners to find their peer group, because that's what this is. It's a peer group. business. You talk about the life of business and the owner who has their own struggles.
So let me give you an example of the struggles, and then we can take it as far as you like. But using your example, who could you go to and say in complete confidence, by the way, what gets talked about inside of EO stays in EO, and I'm not kidding, it's a confidential space. Who else could you go to say, I'm having trouble making payroll this month? And have just an open conversation without judgment, because everybody else around the table would say, man, we have that same problem. Here's what we did. Here's what we did different. Here's how I looked at it. So that's one conversation. But let me take it to the next level. Who would you ever be able to say, I have real feelings of guilt because I haven't been able to get the business to the point where I can give my people a raise and we're having payroll problems? That's another level of getting into the headspace of why I need to listen to Rocky's show or Dom's show and find out how to grow the business so I can take care of my people, so I can add benefits to the compensation program. So da-da-da-da-da-da. That's what EO does. I am the biggest fan you're ever going to find of that group. Can you tell?
I can tell. And there are other mastermind groups out there, and I'll call them mastermind groups.
Yeah, that's a great summary, yeah.
Similar types of things. I know I lead one, and those are the conversations that'll come up. And because we've been together as a tight group for years, it's like, dude, it's been 3 years, and it's the same damn problem. Get off
get off the pot.
Get off the pot, but and hopefully we're not at that same conversation 3 years later, because you're being held accountable and you're being pushed forward. I'm not going to say what the perfect group is. I will tell you what the perfect group is. The one you'll show up at, the one you'll respect, the one that will help push you forward. So figure out what that is and get yourself, I don't even care if you build it yourself. Like, figure it out, do it. Do something. We all need a support group, and whatever that is for you, it is for you.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it's the education, right? They're bringing in speakers to show you new concepts. They've been vetted. It's not people going, buy this and it'll solve all your problems.
No, you don't want that group. You don't want that group.
You don't want that group. Correct.
Now, let me surprise you by linking your opening ask of, hey, Dom, tell me about EO, tell me about EOS, tell me about Vern Harnish, tell me about Brian Tracy. Well, here's something you might not know. Vern Harnish, who wrote Scaling Up, was one of the original founders of EO, of the Entrepreneurs Organization. He started it. And so the Scaling Up system that many people use as a strategic planning tool to grow their company is Vern Harnish's system. But Vern started EO globally. He's a big deal.
Now, was he involved with Gino Wickman too?
Gino Wickman is an EO member.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay. Well, here's the other thing, though, I will say, because I've been to a lot of conferences.
Yeah.
I belong to different groups. You start to see people across platforms.
Oh, okay. Do you want me to really freak you out?
Yeah.
When I got out of college, I thought I would be a real estate agent. And so I started taking courses on how to be a better real estate agent. One of my instructors was a gentleman by the name of Floyd Wickman. Gino's dad.
Ah.
Crazy. So there you go, across platforms. His family has been involved in training for generations. I took courses from Floyd Wickman, and now here I am, and I use Gino Wickman's system, which is EOS, the book called Traction. But they're at the highest level. All of these big thinkers, Mike Michalowicz is one of them, Brian Tracy's another, Deepak Chopra, Tony Robbins, hopefully one day myself. Like, those guys are thinking a certain way, and this goes back to your opening question again. The difference is understanding that a business owner gets paid from the neck up. We get paid to think, we get paid to plan, we get paid to act, and we get paid to do. But it starts with think.
How many of these people do it alone?
None. None, including me and you. And I'm sure Mike Michalowicz has a crew behind him and many influences. Brian Tracy has a crew behind him and many influences. Tony Robbins, a crew behind him, many influences. Vern, Gino. You have to, you can.
But they're all going to each other's stuff too.
Oh yeah, Yeah. When Brian Tracy walks his dog in Solana Beach, California, him and a bunch of other gurus, dogs all pee on the same post. Like they live in the same neighborhood.
You know.
Yeah.
Your network is your net worth, the group you keep,
yeah.
all of these things. And I think a lot of times we don't realize it. We see people with success, and we don't realize the 10 and 20 years of hard work that got them to where they are.
Incredible.
The connections of the people that they know, who they've studied underneath. When you start to look behind the curtain, and I've had to look behind many curtains, it's like, oh, interesting.
I'll tell you the other thing that I've found is how generous they are with their time.
And
you might think, pardon me?
And their knowledge.
Yeah, they really are. You know, I had the opportunity to work with Brian as he was a brand partner in one of my companies. And so I worked directly with Brian. That guy will absolutely, when you're working with him, he will give you everything. And he's the same off stage as he is on stage. I will tell you that off stage, having him chase you for an accountability is like no bruising you've ever seen in your life. I've been on the other end of that boardroom table.
So there's two things there. One, accountability, and that's a big part of what you and I do. I know for me, it's all about it is. I didn't realize how much cheerleading and accountability were part of my job description.
Yeah. My nickname with my clients is the Velvet Hammer.
My clients will be like, you're the only person who's allowed to talk to me like this. They're all business owners. They get it.
They're not used to yeah.
They're not used to that, but they know that I'm doing it out of care for them.
Love and respect.
Not because
100%.
You came to me to help you be your best. And we had, last time we talked about values, one of our value statements is we will tell you the truth even if you fire us. Because when it comes to the numbers,
I am so glad you said that. You know, my practice is growing to the part where I'm adding coaches now. And one of the things that I tell my coaches as I train them is that you should always be willing to ask the question that will get you fired, because that's actually where your work starts. I'm not here to just be a cheerleader. I'm here to ask the tough questions with love and respect and to hold them accountable to their own goals. I'm just a mirror of their goals.
Well, I can show them the math. Like, oh, I got this great idea. Okay, let's do the math. Da-da-da-da-da. What do you think of that idea now? Yeah, not so good.
Yeah,
no kidding. But sometimes we have to do the math for them so that they see that it's not what they think it is.
Or it is.
And then we test. We don't go full forward. We don't go full forward. We go, let's run a small test. Let's see if it works.
Yeah.
Because if it's going to work, it's going to work like that. It's going to happen quick. And now, once we know it's happening quick, now we can allocate resources and keep testing. Is this a blip? So I talk about the apple tree, and I talk to a lot of my business owners about the apple tree. I go, you started your business, and your business is picking apples. So you walk around the apple tree, and, they're just right. Hell, you don't even have to pick them. They're on the ground.
Right.
Right? Now you've grown to X. Now, next year, all of a sudden, you got to reach up a little to grab those apples. Right? Because you picked then the next year comes around, now you got to reach a little higher to get those apples. And then at some point in your business, right, you might need a ladder, you might need some other things, it starts costing you money. You don't start to realize how difficult it is. The first couple percentage points of business are easy, but you hit 10, you hit 20, all of a sudden now you're in a competing business. Or the second thing that happens is everyone's going, oh, look, there's apples over there on the ground. Let's all go pick them up. And now you got 10 guys walking around while you're picking up apples, and business becomes hard, and they don't realize that is what happens.
That's a cool analogy. I love that.
Well, thank you. So EOS and Scaling Up, to me, they're both different shades of the same color, right? They are both essentially, how do we build systems and processes within our business that make it possible for me, the business owner, to sit down for 5 minutes and go thumbs up, thumbs down. What do we need to fix?
Yep. And I totally agree. So one of my businesses was 120 million in sales. At that level, really, Vern Harnish's system, Scaling Up, is the right strategic plan to use. When I had another business that was around 7 million a year. And getting to from, let's say, 0 to 7, EOS, the traction system, is the right system to use. That was for me. And I'm familiar with both systems. But there's a little... when you've got a company that's like a public company or a really big multi-location, lot of really dynamic operations, multiple... I don't mean mid-level managers, but like you've got directors and VPs, and you've got a little bit of depth in your organizational chart, you're starting to look at the Scaling Up system from Vern Harnish.
Now, I'm gonna be honest here. I'm only part way through Vern Harnish's book because I only recently actually heard about.
Oh my God! The first time I read it, Rocky, it was embarrassing. I had to read it twice to understand it.
Oh, I get it. But I'm almost thinking, like the way I'm thinking, I'm like, oh, everyone should at least understand these concepts. Mm-hmm. Not that you have to go into the depth to implement every single thing, but when you start to think bigger, then it becomes easier to fill in and that's what 10x is better than 2x, right? Yeah. The whole concept of 10x is better than 2x is 2x is grinding. 10x is reimagining your business.
Yeah.
What I saw with that book, and it's probably because I already have all the other books under my belt and I understand them, that when I read that book, it's like, okay, this is even bigger picture, and how do you think through this and figuring it all out. Love to hear your thoughts.
Well, it's funny you say 10x is easier than 2x. What we used to say, because I don't know, you can tell under this hat, but my story is written in gray hair and wrinkles. Been around for a while. Add zeros. How can I add zeros to this business? Or how can I add zeros to this problem? That's a great tool, by the way, to solve a problem that's just been nagging at you. And you're like, it's only $1,000 problem. Imagine it was a $100,000 problem. How would you solve it? And I will tell you, and I wonder if you see the same thing as I do, the best solutions to solve problems are not to solve it with money. It's to solve it by being clever. Solve it with your brain. Now, sure, you're going to need money sometimes, but I'll tell you what, thinking your way out of a problem, that's the skill of a growing business person. And that's why they sit with people like you and I, because we have that perspective. Sometimes we're just there to bounce the ideas off of. Say it out loud and you go, oh, that doesn't make sense. Say it out loud, that makes sense. I'm going to go do that. And then they leave the meeting with the confidence to, I'm going to do that. That's how you add zeros. Add zeros to your problems, add zeros to your profits.
I love the statement, just add a zero, right? That's it's a simple thing. So for you listeners, you all know what I'm about to say. Dom doesn't, because the closing gets done long after Dom is gone. Oh. Our closing statement is you don't need more resources. You need to be more resourceful.
Oh, I love it. See, right? You and I think very similar.
We do. That's why you're here for two. Because these are that's exactly what it comes down to. And I think too often we take the easy way out, and the easy way out is to throw money at a problem.
Yeah.
And as we talked about in the last episode, what we were doing is we were throwing money at every one of those profit leaks instead of actually fixing the problem.
Yeah.
And that's
death by 1,000 cuts. It becomes death by 1,000 cuts.
And then your overhead gets so massive that you get yourself into, I don't know how to do this, and then you hit a hiccup, and now the whole thing blows up.
Yeah. I was talking to a client the other day, and they were having trouble getting the partners together for a meeting. Now, it's very simple, partners meeting, and I had even laid the agenda out for them. This is what you're going to talk about in the meeting. And so I was texting back and forth with one of the partners, and he's like, I just can't get the guys in the room. And I quoted Vern Harnish at that time, which is, most companies suffer from indigestion, not starvation. And just think about the wisdom of that statement. It's not that there's not enough business to be had. It's just that we can't process it. We're failing in spite of ourselves. And I don't want to say that I have all the answers. I don't. I don't have all the answers. I'm still learning. But I do have the opinion or the attitude that show me the problem and I will face it head on, and we're going to attack the problem. And then we're going to go over it, under it, through it, around it, redefine it so it fits my agenda. I don't care, but that problem will be solved.
And that's what you have to put the effort. You have to get everyone in the room. And honestly, that's why. So that's one of the things I talk to my business owners, and it kind of comes out of traction. You need to have scheduled short meetings.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of 16 interruptions a day with a problem, it's like, look, we're going to have a meeting in the morning for 10 minutes. We're going to have a meeting at the end of the day for 10 minutes. Bring me your problems in those times. And if you don't have problems, then we'll just have a cup of coffee. But the point is, it eliminates 10 interruptions. And every time you have an interruption, that takes 15 minutes to regroup.
Yeah.
So it's why you're running around with your head cut off.
Yeah, there's a million reasons for that. Can I give you a tool that might help some, but not all?
Sure.
People are hearing you say that. Yeah, listen, I know we have to have these long meetings, but I always want to be there for my guys, my crew. Sorry, I keep thinking construction language because that's my specialty, but I always want to be there. I want to have an open door policy. And so what happens then is you're the victim of that open door policy. So I'll tell you, keep the open door policy, but change the policy. I have an open door policy from 10 till 2, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Mm-hmm. Right? The other thing that you said that I really appreciate is meetings happen. If we have a production meeting, if we have a safety meeting, if whatever the meeting is, that meeting happens every single, I'll say, week. So let's say it's a safety meeting and it happens Wednesday mornings. That meeting happens as long as there is more than one person attending. Because if I don't take those meetings seriously, if I just let them stop or have a whole bunch of conditions on them, then they stop. And we're not the kind of company that has discipline.
One of the things I love is Zoom. And the reason I love Zoom is because on Zoom, there is a respect for time. Mm. Everybody shows up on time and leaves on time. Right? It's just, hey, we have a Zoom meeting from 11 to 11:15. At 11 o'clock, the screen fills up. Everybody's there. We have a meeting. It's 11:15. Have a nice day.
And we're gone.
Yeah. Whereas when I work in real life, nobody's on time. Everybody's late. Things like nobody's watching a clock. I don't. And I live on Zoom. There's a reason for it.
Yeah. So I'll tell you that one of the things that is very important to me is time and time management. Mm-hmm. And so if meetings start late, that's fine the first time, but we're going to talk about it. I think this is where the velvet hammer comes in, Rocky. Late is late. Late is late. We're not a late company.
And I think the one thing that Zoom's been helpful with, because I grew up under the thought process of 10 minutes early is late.
Yes.
Right? So, but that meant I have to be 10 minutes early everywhere. Well, at least with Zoom, it's you just show up within that 60-second window and everybody's happy.
Everybody's happy.
Don't come before it. Don't come after it.
Yeah.
And everyone's... And it's funny because if people... And I do it myself. If I'm a minute past, the first thing I do, sorry, I'm a minute late.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that occurred, but it's just one of those anomalies in life, and so be it. So you worked with Brian Tracy. Let's close out with that. What are the things that you learned from working with Brian Tracy?
Well, first, I'm so happy that I had the chance to do it, because even when I was younger and going down the path of learning, my first company, we were joking about this, was a Christmas light installation company. And I was not doing very well. And then I moved into painting. I still wasn't doing well. And my uncle, who I had been working for as a framer, suggested that I talk to his accountant. His accountant got me reading Brian Tracy books. And one of the goal-setting things I did is I wrote a goal that one day I'm going to take Brian Tracy for lunch. I didn't realize one day I'd be his business partner. And so one of the things I learned from Brian was the discipline of business and the discipline of simple systems. If all of Brian's books are very easy to read. He doesn't deviate. He sticks to the same core principles. And it's just easy. It just makes it easy. And that's what I've always admired with him. Stick to some simple systems and hit repeat.
I have this saying, life is simple. Doing simple is hard.
Yeah. I can overcomplicate things like you wouldn't believe. Like my mind goes, and it's hard. I have to have the discipline to keep it simple and just take one step at a time. Forced perspective, like pull myself back from what I'm doing and understand what is the one thing to do now and ignore the rest later. And I think you said you have a report that gives people the priorities, buttons, levers. What do you push? What do you pull? Those things are of critical importance for anybody who wants to grow a business predictably.
And that's what, for our clients, we sit down and we come up, what is the one action step I need to take before we talk again?
Yeah.
That will allow you to move forward to being a more profitable and growing business. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're here. Otherwise, it's a hobby, and there's nothing wrong with a hobby, and there's nothing wrong with being a nonprofit, but let's call a spade, and let's be what we are, right? And that's okay. Pick what you want and go do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I learned a lot from Brian. A wise man. I'm so glad to have worked with him. And like I said before, he's the same on stage as he is off stage. But I'll tell you what, here's what would happen. I would put together an agenda for our meeting. We'd have like half-day meetings or full-day meetings. And I'd have item 12 on the agenda was the one I didn't want to talk about. Right? We'd sit down, coffee's still steaming in the mug, and he would say, "Hello, Dominic." We'd have our little pleasantry. He would immediately go to the one thing on that agenda I wasn't prepared for, and that would be his agenda for our meeting the whole day. And you couldn't get away, man. It was like he figured it out like that. I mean, don't get me wrong. That's why we grew. I grew that business from 6 units to 237 units globally with him as a partner. It was fantastic.
So I have a question, because this is something I've struggled with in the past. Something that drives me up the wall. People who are not the same on stage as they are in life.
Yeah. I know. I've seen that. Trust me. And it's horrible.
How do you tell that, though, just watching? Or is it just you have to go through the experience?
You have to see the offstage. For me, I've found that it's seeing the offstage is disappointing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not going to name names today. No. But I think that's important for people to realize. Make sure you look under the covers.
Yeah.
And even then, even some of the people who off stage are horrible people, we can still learn something from them. So take your nuggets. Just be careful. That's all I want to say.
Choose your mentors wisely might be the thing that you and I have learned. Again, that's a gray hair and wrinkle statement, Rocky. Not to imply that you have those, but you got to be around a little while to say, uh-oh.
I don't have many gray hairs because I don't have many hairs. And I'm okay with that. It's that comfort of understanding wisdom. You get to that point. And, at the end of the day, that's what people pay me for. Wisdom. Yeah. Wisdom. More than anything.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming back. If people would like to connect with you, learn from you, what should they do?
Well, I mean, you can find me online. If you can't find me, you're really not looking. My name's Dominic Rubino. The only thing I'll tell you is I'm not the junior college wrestler named Dominic Rubino. That's another kid. But you know what? Listen to my podcast. I have 2 shows. One's called Profit Tool Belt. The other one is called Cabinet Maker Profit System. That one's just for cabinet makers and architectural millworkers. But I deal with construction trades, as you can tell. But if somebody wants to reach out to me directly, just shoot me a text. My cell is 314.
And I was on your one podcast. They should all go listen to that episode, because I think it's the best one you've ever had.
It's the best one ever. You changed the world of podcasting, Rocky.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Rocky.
Thanks for listening to this unedited video of the Profit Answer Man podcast. If you'd like to catch the full episode and learn more about what we do, check us out at profitcomesfirst.com. We also go through the Profit First book in each and every chapter in the beginning episodes of the podcast, so check those out as well. Thanks for listening, and here's to you having a more profitable and growing business.